We will now begin the FPC Korea Policy Forum with Vice Minister for ICT Kyeong-Sik CHO of the Ministry of Science and ICT. The FPC Korea Policy Forum is a monthly event hosted by the KCIS of the MSIT with the presence of ministers and vice ministers of major ministries of Korea. The event holds significance in that the details of policies of Korea are shared with the foreign press and governments for greater mutual communication. Today's forum is the third of the year, following the first forum with the presence of Prime Minister on January 27th and the second forum with the chairman of the Presidential Committee on the Fourth Industrial Revolution on March 11th. Today's topic is Digital New Deal policy of the Korean government and the AI healthcare software in the era of COVID-19. I'd like to introduce his presenters. First, let me introduce Second Vice Minister Kyeong-Sik CHO of the MSIT, who will deliver the opening remarks. Vice Minister Cho is a well-versed public official with over 30 years of public service in the area of ICT policies. Just until last week, he served as the Secretary for Digital Innovation at the Presidential Secretary's Office. After the opening remarks, Mr. Sang-Goog LEE, head of the Digital New Deal support team at the MSIT, will present on the Digital New Deal policy of Korea. On the AI healthcare software, we invited two renowned medical experts who are in charge of the projects. And on Dr.Answer, which can quickly diagnose causes of rare uncurable diseases, we have Dr. Chong-Jai KIM, Chief Research Officer at the Asan Medical Center, and also the team leader of the Dr.Answer project. Dr. Kim has been the lead developer of Dr.Answer, the most representative Korean New Deal project, and was selected as the Korean New Deal Person of the Month and received the government's memorial tablet 2 days ago. Congratulations! And next, we have Professor Shanghan Lee at the College of Medicine at Korea University, and also the PHIS project team leader. I'd also like to introduce Director Jung-Yeol Park of the Korean Culture and Information Service of MCST and Director General Jeong-Sam KIM of the Software Policy Bureau of MSIT, the co-host ministries. Today's Policy Forum is broadcast live on the KTV Korean YouTube channel and the Arirang TV YouTube channel. Here on site, we have Korean English simultaneous interpretation. Due to the COVID-19 quarantine rules, following the order of application, we have 10 foreign journalists and 5 diplomatic officials from foreign embassies in Korea. For those of you who could not attend physically, you may join us through our YouTube channels and share your questions through the online messenger. We will begin with Vice Minister Cho's opening remarks and hear the presentations. Let us invite Vice Minister.
Good afternoon. I'm Kyeong-Sik CHO, the Second Vice Minister of Science and ICT. First of all, I would like to thank all of the foreign journalists for taking the time out of their busy schedules and amidst strict COVID-19 quarantine measures to attend a Digital New Deal policy briefing today. For the past 1 year, countries around the world, due to COVID-19, have suffered human, physical, and economic losses extensively. Notwithstanding the difficulties that still persist, vaccines are being developed in a number of countries, and each country has started rolling out their COVID-19 vaccination programs. Korea, too, started COVID-19 vaccination on February 25th, and since then, more than 850,000 people have been vaccinated on a cumulative basis. I sincerely hope that vaccination proceeds smoothly and that we can overcome difficulties and disruptions caused by COVID-19 as soon as possible. In spite of enormous difficulties posed by COVID-19, Korea has implemented systematic disease control measures as well as various policies to revitalize the stagnant economy. In last July, Digital New Deal policy was announced, which serves as a classic example of these measures. The Digital New Deal taps into our world-class ICT infrastructure, manufacturing technologies, and various services so as to overcome the ongoing crisis, while it pursues a transformation from a fast follower to a leading economy through core strategies. The Ministry of Science and ICT, in particular, with a view to accelerating outcomes from the Digital New Deal, carried out Data Dam project worth around 500 billion Korean won last year. The Digital New Deal support team was specifically set up to support systematic implementation of policies. Recently, the Digital New Deal is delivering results in various fields. In particular, achievements in the medical field, as they represent the convergence of ICT and medical technology, are meaningful per se, but the fact that ICT plays a significant role in saving people's lives makes these achievements all the more noteworthy. The Korean government has invested 36.4 billion Korean won over the last 3 years to develop an artificial intelligence doctor called Dr.Answer that utilizes medical data of Koreans. Dr.Answer is an AI medical software developed with 100% homegrown technology. Mortality rates, share of medical expenses, and public benefits were taken into consideration to identify 8 diseases that would be diagnosed with this assistive program comprising 21 AI softwares. 26 domestic medical institutions and 22 ICT companies worked in cooperation to develop the software over a 3-year period, and 38 domestic medical institutions carried out clinical verification, which demonstrated enhanced diagnostic accuracy, reduced diagnosis time, and other breakthroughs. In particular, Saudi Arabia's Ministry of National Guard Health Affairs affiliated hospital conducted a 6-month-long clinical verification, which showed that an equally outstanding performance level in diagnosis as demonstrated in Korea was achieved there. Now we're having working level negotiations with Saudi Arabia to export this technology. Medical data in terms of accurate diagnosis, vaccines development, new drug development, and various digital healthcare services development is the most critical element above all else. As such, systematic accumulation, exchange, and distribution of medical data is key to the 4th industrial revolution in the medical field. Another example I will introduce today is PHIS, which is a cloud-based precision medical hospital information system. PHIS is designed to help healthcare professionals at the front line to treat patients with convenience, while supporting systematic medical data accumulation and exchange, and thus will become the foundational infrastructure for the 4th IR in the field of medicine. In the following presentations, each subject matter expert will give more detailed information, the Korean government's Digital New Deal policy, and key features of Dr.Answer and PHIS will be explained in detail, so we ask for your close attention. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Sang-Goog LEE, head of the Digital New Deal support team at the MSIT, will present on Korea's New Deal policy. Good afternoon. My name is Sang-Goog LEE, and I'm here to present on the Digital New Deal policy of Korea. I am currently head of the Digital New Deal support team at MSIT. I'm aware that many foreign journalists and diplomatic officials from foreign embassies in Seoul are present today. It's a pleasure to see you. And I'd like to thank officials from the Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism for allowing such a meaningful event. The topic I'd like to present today is the Digital New Deal. While the topic is very broad, since I only have some 10 minutes given to speak, I would like to focus on the core issues. Today, I'd like to present on the why of the Digital New Deal, that is the background, and also cover the concept of the Digital New Deal and its future direction, and also how the Korean government plans to implement the Digital New Deal in a little more detail. As you all know, the world today is undergoing a grand change in its civilized history. In the past, steam engines and electric energy were invented, and then the computer. And with every invention, we went through a massive industrial revolution. And recently, we are faced with the massive wave of the 4th industrial revolution. Artificial intelligence, big data, and the Internet of Things and such super-connected technologies have enabled technological advancement. And such development was not limited to the technological field, but went on to increase our industrial productivity and create new industries. Furthermore, it has changed the existing workplace structure as well as the way we live. However, as we are all aware, the COVID-19 situation has unfortunately changed so many things. Our lives in the post-COVID-19 era world has changed dramatically from our lives of the past, and this is now called the new normal. Such changes have mainly led to the rise and expansion of the untapped economy, generalization of disasters, and changes in the global value chain. Then, how should we overcome such economic crisis caused by the COVID-19, and how should we respond to this time of grand transition in the era of the 4th Industrial Revolution? What kind of action should we take? This has been what the Korean government has been dealing with, and this was the start of the Digital New Deal. One of the greatest challenges of COVID-19 is the loss of many jobs. And people are not only concerned about quarantine, but also feel a sense of crisis for the economic situation. In order to face with such challenges, the Korean government aims to pursue an innovation based on DNA. DNA stands for Data, Network, and AI. We believe that such innovation based on high technology could change the overall structure of our society and industry. And now I'd like to present on the what of the Digital New Deal. Originally, the New Deal policy was an economic revitalization strategy to overcome the Great Depression in the 1930s in the US. There were many projects such as the Hoover Dam construction and massive SOC projects, which created a large number of jobs. New cities were built and new roads were constructed, and by creating new power supplies, it laid the foundation for a new industrial revolution. By referring to the US New Deal policy, the Korean government established Korea's new policies and comprehensive strategies, and that is the Korean New Deal. The Korean New Deal was announced last July, and the Korean New Deal is composed of three main pillars. They are the Digital New Deal, Green New Deal, and the Local New Deal. These three pillars are based on employment and social safety nets, so that it not only leads digital and the fourth industrial revolution, but also presents strategies to resolve various social disparities due to the COVID-19. And among them, I would like to focus on the Digital New Deal. I would like to explain why the Digital New Deal is important, and also related to the rise of the untapped economy, as I previously mentioned, the digitalization has become the core factor that determines the future competitiveness of a nation. So depending on how we respond to digitalization will determine the competitiveness of a nation. And in Korea, we have world-renowned companies and ICT infrastructure. So based on such driving force, Korea, in order to vitalize the digital economy, we came up with many strategies, and that is the core of the Digital New Deal.
As for the framework for the Digital New Deal, we have 4 major fields and 12 key tasks. By 2025, $5 billion will be invested to make 900,000 jobs. So that is a plan for 2025. And when we were selecting 12 tasks for 4 fields, we focused on their impact on economic vitality and job creation. So these were the criteria that we used to select the relevant tasks. First of all, we're going to be focusing on DNA ecosystem reinforcement, and second, digitization of education infrastructure and promotion of contactless industries, and last but not least, digitization of social overhead capital. Let me provide you with some details. As for the reinforcement of the DNA ecosystem, data, network, and AI are utilized to strengthen existing industries and to generate new industries. The priority focus area for the Korean government is the utilization of data. As we're living in the fourth industrial revolution era, data is often described as the oil of the fourth industrial revolution. So utilization of data is really critical to determining national competitiveness. The Korean government is also implementing a project called Data Dam. Data that can be learned by AI, and various data that are produced from different fields are going to be collected, processed, and accumulated. And throughout that process, a lot of jobs will be created. Also across industries, 5G and AI convergence will be expanded. Autonomous driving vehicles, ships, as well as more than 30,000 smart factories, and their development will be supported by the government. And for each of the fields, AI will be fully utilized, and this will be linked to the largest scale core project called AIX project. The government is also trying to become smarter to be able to provide more convenient lives for the public. We'll be focusing on customized various public services that can be provided on a real-time basis. The development is currently underway, and also we'll be introducing 5G national network and also introduce cloud through continuous innovation. However, one of the concerns regarding digitization is a potential incidence of cyber attacks and other type of threats. So there's full support being provided in that regard, especially for the SMEs, as well as core software system, ex-ante inspections and checks will be conducted. Before I move on to the next slide, let me provide you with greater details about Data DEM project, because this is the leading example of the Digital New Deal. So this is something that all the journalists over here should actually take away as a big lesson. Data DEM involves various public sector and private sector, and it is all about collecting the data from these different sectors. Data, once that is produced, goes through standardization, processing, and accumulation process, and jobs are to be created. And this data is produced for different purposes, and it will be utilized by AI. For example, autonomous driving vehicles, smart factories, and smart government services. All of them will tap into AI for their development, and data, once it is developed, will be provided for use by the public. And this will be done by the government, and this is what the government is already doing, and the number is also increasing. Second part is digitization of the education infrastructure. This is probably the investment for the future, because that's the surest investment that we can have. And this is also an area of greater importance. What we really want to focus on is the fact that there's an increasing demand for digital education. A lot of young students are learning coding, and utilization of digitization technology will determine the competitiveness for the future. So it is all about establishing a core infrastructure for education. Across elementary, middle, and high schools, high-speed Wi-Fi networks will be implemented, and latest tablet PCs will be provided. And remote learning is becoming a norm. So remote education system will become more sophisticated. And university system, vocational training and education. These areas will be where we will focus our efforts on to provide better content and enhance the quality. Third is the development of contactless industries. After my presentation, Dr.Answer presentation will follow, which is really related to the remote medicine. And other than that, smart hospitals where collaboration is possible between and across hospitals, as well as dealing with the vulnerable members of society. For example, the elderly population and people with disabilities, they'll be provided with support, for example, with AI or IoT devices, so that they can respond to accidents on a real-time basis. We're also providing relevant services to that regard. And also the industries that are hard hit by COVID-19. These are SMEs and micro businesses. And we're providing full support for them as well. And last year, for the SMEs, we provided contactless service vouchers to 80,000 companies. We will be increasing the number to 60,000 more this year. Remote work is also becoming a norm, and capacity is actually lacking across small and medium-sized companies. So we will provide them with remote work solutions, as well as conferencing room solutions. And also 360,000 small companies will be supported with their online penetration. Last but not least is the digitization of a social overhead capital. This is aimed at providing better convenience and security and stability to people by upgrading and sophisticating outdated national SOCs. First, the project begins with the digitization of a map. It is very important for autonomous driving vehicles, because mapping becomes a very foundation for implementing this type of project. We'll also be carrying out digitization for railroads, as well as rivers and streams, so that we can prevent any flood or natural disasters or accidents. And Smart City project is currently being implemented across Busan and Sejong, and each city is introducing their respective smart solutions. And when we initiated this project last year, we were able to see a reduced crimes rate, as well as the travel time for ambulances were reduced to 7 minutes. And recently, as there's a lot of need for contactless industries, we have greater needs for logistics and logistics centers as well. They're going to become smarter, and also smaller logistics companies will be brought into the ecosystem, and we'll be providing them with common use logistics center. By 2021, we want to make sure that the Digital New Deal becomes successful. By then, the Korean government will have become a very smart country. But not only that, more convenience will be provided to the public, and industries will become more competitive, and our national system will become very convenient for the public. In last July, the Korean government announced the Korean New Deal, which was a collaborative effort across different ministries. Not only MSIT, but other ministries came on board. And I just want to focus on what our ministry has done. There were various meaningful results that were created. There were 120,000 projects that we carried out, and about 10% of that, which is 12,000 projects, were related to SMEs. We also saw an increasing number of companies providing AI and data, and now we're seeing digitization in terms of agriculture, education, and beauty, unlike the past where most of the digitization was focused on ICT. We're seeing that these companies are becoming contactless and more digital. As we're making this digital transition, probably the biggest concern for us is a growing digital divide. This is not something that I was able to address before in my presentation, especially the elderly population and people with disabilities could be left behind by not having access to digital technologies. So the government has enhanced a digital learning system since last year. 420,000 people have received digital literacy training and education, but due to COVID-19, we're having non-face-to-face training and education, also providing online education. We also have shuttle on the bus, on-the-go services that are reaching out to the remotest parts of the country. There was a favorable response from the recipients. I gave my presentation on Digital New Deal, and the last point that I want to emphasize is that the Digital New Deal will contribute to Korea's overcoming economic crisis, and this is going to be a very good example to prepare for the future. It could be a benchmark for many countries around the world, so I hope that many journalists as well as other countries will pay a lot of attention to this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now we will have the presentation by Dr. Chong-Jai KIM, Chief Research Officer at the Asan Medical Center and also team leader of the Dr.Answer project. Good afternoon. I am Chong-Jai KIM at the Asan Medical Center. I am pleased to introduce Dr. Answer to foreign journalists. And above all, I'd like to thank Vice Minister Cho and Director Park and all the officials for making today's event possible. Today, I'd like to introduce the Dr. Answer project and its overview, and briefly go over the main features of the software that were developed under the Dr. Answer project. Throughout the entire medical area from prevention to treatment, Dr. Answer provides a precision healthcare, and its aim is to provide this based on artificial intelligence. Our project was carried out over a 3-year span. In the first year, high-quality data was collected from hospitals based on the cloud system. And in the second year, we used the collected data to develop software. And in the third year, this was when we experienced the most fruitful achievements, because we could apply the software at the healthcare centers and test and verify their functionality. The benefit of introducing such software in the field to us healthcare providers and the benefits for the patients, this was something we wanted to understand. And as a matter of fact, most hospital medical records are in a digital format. So doctors normally check and comprehend the various data of patients that are collected in real time to decide on the patient's prognosis and treatment methods. In order to go through such massive data in a limited time, the physician needs to spend a long time to review numerous figures and data on the monitor. Patients would get nervous if the physician takes so long studying the monitor, fearing if there is something wrong with their health. But when AI is used to swiftly analyze the data and visualize the data for the patient or the physician to understand it more clearly, it would make the physician's task easier to explain to the patients, and would also help the patient to have a better understanding of their health condition. And the physician and patient may spend more time talking about more important things. Second, in most larger healthcare facilities, there are a large number of medical staff in different medical fields, so it is possible for them to seek opinion or expertise about a certain disease when making decisions on diagnosis or treatment methods. But in reality, for most hospitals throughout the world, there are only one or two physicians, and they need to rely on their own decisions to decide on the diagnosis or treatment of a patient. Since there is a lack of experts to seek advice in such cases, if the AI could assist with diagnosing or treating a patient, there will be a greater level of confidence and trust in the physician's decision, and this would provide greater benefit to the patient. Third, just as been explained, by sharing such software, it will become possible for healthcare providers in different parts of the world to remotely communicate and share opinions on a real-time basis. Dr.Answer was developed as an artificial intelligence physician that may provide the answers to the questions of patients. As I previously mentioned, the Dr.Answer project began with collecting data, using the data to develop software, and applying and distributing the software on site. And throughout this process, it aims to create an AI industrial ecosystem by distributing such software at healthcare facilities. And also, in order to complement the existing system. In order to develop the software, major disease groups were chosen, and hospitals and ICT companies collaborated in teams. Under the Dr.Answer project, some 20 or more medical centers and 20 or more ICT companies participated. And to my knowledge, the Dr.Answer project is the largest R&D consortium in the history of Korea. Initially, under the Dr.Answer project, 8 major diseases were selected. And among them, there are cardiocerebrovascular diseases, heart disease, and among cancer, there are breast cancer, prostate cancer, and among brain disease, there are dementia and epilepsy. And what was especially meaningful was the software that were developed to assist the diagnosis of rare genetic diseases of children. For 8 disease groups, a total of 21 software were developed. And now I'd like to brief you over the features of each software. The first is a software assisting colonoscopy session called Smart Endo software. As a matter of fact, the greatest challenge in the actual colonoscopy is detecting the polyps in the colon. Polyps may progress into cancer with time, so it is critical to detect and remove them in an early stage. Throughout the world, there is a probability of nearly 20% of missing such polyps, even in the smallest figure, according to statistics. Therefore, once they are missed and when the patients return after 5 or 10 years for a colonoscopy, and when they are diagnosed with cancer, this is a critical matter to the patient. And to prevent and complement such cases, the software not only assists the detection of polyps or cancer in the colon in real time, but also, as you can see, it provides not only a real-time image, but also provides a review mode for past images. As you can see, this video clip is a mock colon, and this is how the mock polyp is labeled. And the location of the polyp during a colonoscopy session of the patient is labeled in real time. The second software assists the diagnosis of dementia based on the brain MRI images. The basic function of this software is to determine the level of atrophy of the brain based on quantifiable index compared to normal data. Therefore, this is a highly effective software at the clinical site. The software divides the entire brain into 50 areas and suggests the level of atrophy by indexes for each area. The current version is advanced enough to conduct the analysis within 1 to 2 minutes, which normally takes hours or tens of minutes for the human to conduct. As you can see here in the MRI image of the brain, the different parts of the brain is shown in different colors. I'm trying to work on the video clip. I'm afraid the video clip is not being supported. Based on the medical imaging of this MRI, a quantifiable and objective result is presented. As you can see, the different colors show different areas of the brain. The bottom right-hand image shows the recomposed image. And next, I'd like to introduce the heart-related software. One of the software predicts the probability of a patient to be rehospitalized after being hospitalized if the patient has a heart disease based on the patient's medical record. And on the right side, you may all know that the myocardial infarction is a critical disease. The key to determining myocardial infarction is the coronary artery calcification. And this is a software to diagnose the level of calcification of the coronary artery. As you can see on the right side figures, the software shows the level of calcification of the coronary artery. Another software is for the diagnosis of prostate cancer, which is one of the most challenging diseases to detect based on medical images. And on breast cancer, there's a software that can read the medical records of a patient to predict the probability of the patient to have breast cancer, or for patients that already have been diagnosed with breast cancer, the software presents the probability of a recurrence of breast cancer. For epilepsy, there is a software that conducts an EEG analysis of the brain in minutes and also detects the focus area where epilepsy can occur on the brain. And there's a software that automatically analyzes genetic mutations on a massive scale so that, especially for child patients with diseases that are difficult to diagnose, such as hearing disorders or developmental disorders, this may help with early diagnosis to help with necessary medication at an early stage so that the child patient can be benefited. Also, there's software to diagnose brain aneurysm or brain hemorrhage. Such software that was developed were distributed to the healthcare organizations, and we will continue to build an ecosystem where such artificial intelligence will be used. Then, what did Dr.Answer software change at the actual medical fields? As a matter of fact, with its introduction, it helped with improving the diagnosis and especially the effectiveness of the diagnosis, and it increased the success rate of detecting polyps in a colonoscopy. It also reduced the diagnosis time based on medical imaging or genetic analysis, so that in the mid to long term, it's expected to save up to 600 billion won of domestic medical expenses. And it is being praised as one of the most successful ICT R&D projects in Korea. There are diverse methods to apply Dr.Answer in the medical field. One possibility is to apply it as an AI module for the PHIS system, which will be presented right after this presentation. Another possibility, which is in progress, is to apply this for emergency care or to apply it to medical devices. The Dr.Answer software is highly likely to be introduced to the Saudi Arabia hospital under the Ministry of National Guard Health Affairs. Last October 2019, we held a local meeting and shared our use experience with local clinicians. Just as Vice Minister has said, almost equivalent level of efficacy compared to the domestic level was guaranteed here. We believe that the Dr.Answer software is a meaningful achievement and will serve as a bridgehead for technological advancement overseas. We also have worked on promoting the Dr.Answer software for the public awareness through conferences or exhibit halls. And this is the Dr.Answer showcase at the Asan Medical Center in Seoul. The patients that visit the showroom may have a hands-on experience on Dr.Answer at the kiosk. And this will be the last slide. In the long run, Dr.Answer has been positioned as a new medical intelligence platform standard for numerous Korean companies based on its domestic R&D. Therefore, we will continue our efforts so that Dr.Answer will continue to contribute to the health of not only Koreans, but also to global citizens. And with that, I'd like to conclude. I apologize that the video clip did not work. Thank you.
I am the PHIS Development Project Leader, Lee Sang-Heon, Professor of Korea University. First of all, I would like to thank Vice Minister Cho and Director Park and other relevant officials for organizing this very important meeting today. In this forum, I would like to talk about how, in this era of the Fourth Industrial Revolution, how the Fourth Industrial Revolution is different from the previous three revolutions. We're now living in the era of the Fourth Industrial Revolution. So what would be the major difference between this revolution and the existing industrial revolutions? It is that the services are now becoming customized. This is thanks to IoT, 5G, AI, big data, and cloud technologies that are converging with one another to deliver customized and most optimized solutions for consumers. For example, autonomous driving technology is probably the best example to cite. For example, if the same type of information is given, then we could run into traffic accidents. The same goes for the medical field as well. All these different technologies are becoming convergent to enable the delivery of customized, tailored services for patients. In the era of the Fourth Industrial Revolution, again, the AI, big data, cloud, IoT technologies, to provide customized services, the most critical thing to have is to produce high-quality medical big data. And in generating such high-quality medical big data, the biggest concern or the bottleneck is explained at the bottom of the slide. It is that all the hospital information systems that are in use are different and they use different terminologies. So for one hospital to work together with other hospitals in producing big data, it's quite challenging, and integration process will be quite costly. So the best way would be to develop high-quality HIS program on cloud and use that across different hospitals through the concept of shared economy, because the system will be using the same terminology. Although these are different hospitals, they could operate as if they're one hospital, and they can produce and they can generate high-quality medical big data. So in 2017, the Korean government, together with the MSIT and the Ministry of Health and Welfare, launched the cloud-based precision medicine hospital information system project for the Fourth Industrial Revolution, and also Cancer Precision Medical Diagnosis and Treatment Project, or Big Data Project. So these two projects were implemented. Now I'm going to show you a short video clip about the PHIS system.
In the age of the Fourth Industrial Revolution, when all aspects of life are being revolutionized, the medical world is preparing for this transformation in breathtaking ways by combining big data and ICT. The analysis of the human constitution, as well as people's specific lifestyles, has led to the development of the field of precise medicine, a futuristic form of personalized medical service. As a first step, the Precision Medical Hospital Information System, PHIS, which is an essential piece of infrastructure in precision medical care, has begun to take shape. PHIS enables the analytical work required for precision medical care to emerge using medical data which has been produced and made available by a wide range of medical institutions. In particular, as the system was developed on a cloud basis, the individual hospitals can select the modules they require according to the size and characteristics of the specific hospitals they are assessing. You can save money compared to when managing the system by itself. In addition, through the Artificial Intelligence Analysis Sharing Service, small local hospitals have been able to provide high-quality medical services to the same standard as large hospitals in metropolitan areas. The Precision Medical Hospital Information System, just as cars with a range of functionality run on the highway, We will continue to add functions to make the system more and more complete and to ensure its broad utilization. In the era of the fourth industrial revolution, beginning with advanced ICT technology and top-notch medical technology, the flowering of precision medical services, the first step towards becoming a global healthcare powerhouse.
For this project, Korea's most leading 10 research hospitals, 6 of them took part. And as an IT software company, the leader of which is Samsung SDS, that led the development for the program and for the cloud system, Naver Cloud, during the process. So this system was developed by the top talents of Korea. Also, through the cloud-based hospital information system, the most outstanding system resides on cloud, and the medical records can be collected together with the genomic data, especially cancer precision medical diagnosis and treatment project. Their data can be combined together, and PHR, which is personal health records, can be collected through modules such as lifelog data coming from smartwatches, Bluetooth, blood glucose meters, and these 200 different medical devices are connected with one another. And this data can come from hospitals as well as devices together with the genomic information and lifelog data. They all can be combined together to produce and to collect the high quality medical big data, which becomes a very basis and foundation for precision medical solutions. The system has been completed and it is now in operation at the Korea University of Medicine. So for tertiary hospitals with over 1,000 beds are now having the system in operation based on cloud. The system will be rolled out to 3 affiliated hospitals of the Korea University of Medicine. It will also be linked to major national hospitals as well as major secondary and tertiary hospitals together in the process of a medical big data development. And Samsung Hospital will also take part in the process. The system will continue to be expanded to 80 hospitals in the future, and also hospitals overseas will also be part of the system in creating big data. This medical big data will be linked to specialized AI companies, medical device companies, and pharmaceutical companies and research institutions. And this collaboration will lead to the development of the world's best precision medical solutions. This hospital information system will deal with treatment, nursing, administration, patient care, and all related hospital programs. And all these programs are available on the cloud system, comprising 38 modules, and any additional features will be modularized and upgraded. Out of the 38 modules in PHIS, 24 are mandatory modules and 14 are optional modules, depending on the size and the application of the hospitals. So hospitals can choose the modules that they want, and they will pay based on the amount of usage. In order to disseminate the PHIS, Korea University of Medicine, Naver, and Samsung, Seoul Hospital have set up a joint venture through which dissemination and rollout will continue and the cloud-based system will be maintained. Because it is a modular system, Dr.Answer's AI system, which was explained before, will be connected to this, and 5G emergency care systems can be connected so that this system becomes a comprehensive hospital information system. The development of the system took into consideration user experience and convenience. So with a strong focus on user experience, we began the design from zero base. So when we're trying to, for example, identify a patient, we would have to, for example, click 8 times or 9 times to determine the patient's condition, but we can now do that with only 1 click of a mouse. Also, the same goes for the prescription process. We had to, for example, go through 9 different steps or clicks. We can do that with as little as 3 steps because user convenience has been embedded in the design process. It is a cloud-based hospital information system, and as such, this is quite different from the existing legacy SI system at the hospitals. So the implementation cost can be reduced by 40 to 50%. And also the maintenance and repair cost can be saved as well because not all of the hospitals have to do maintenance and repair. We can do that with only one system. So we can reduce the cost that is necessary to maintain and repair the system. Although we're using such an outstanding system with the same terminology, we can reduce the cost by as much as 40%. So the same type of terminology is used on the cloud-based HIS. So these hospitals can operate as if they're a one integrated hospital. And through this, they're able to produce high-quality big data. We will continue to expand the system, disseminate the system to other hospitals, and high-quality medical big data will continue to be harnessed so that we can provide optimized, precision-based HIS-related solutions in the 4th Industrial Revolution era. Such accumulated data will be accumulated in the medical big data, and hospitals that are using PHIS, although they're separate and different hospitals, will be accessing the same cloud HIS using the same type of terminology, and they're able to produce highest quality big data. So this medical big data, which is really critical in the 4th Industrial Revolution. Of course, the oil was the most important currency in the past, but data will become the most important currency in the future. So this medical big data is utilized, and various companies specialized in AI, medical devices, as well as pharmaceutical companies and research institutions. All these different stakeholders can come together through collaboration and develop the world's most competitive precision medical solutions going forward. The most important purpose behind developing PHIS is to provide the best precision medical solutions for the patients and humanity at large. Now that the program is complete and on the cloud, tertiary hospitals accommodating over 1,000 beds are using the system, and the system has been flawlessly implemented, and we have taken the very first step forward. PHIS will provide the best customized precision medicine solutions to patients, and it will also contribute to the governments in their policy making as well as the state's health insurance financing. And also, hospitals and companies will collaborate with one another to develop precision medicine, and they will partner with other global players in moving the process forward. Thank you very much. This concludes my presentation.
We will begin our Q&A session. We will receive offline questions and online questions separately. For those of you on site that have questions, please raise your hands and introduce yourselves and your affiliation. And we'd appreciate it if the questions are brief. And please appreciate, please designate to whom your question is directed to. Are there any questions on site? And journalist Stacey Young from New York Times. To Dr. Chong-Jai KIM and Dr. Sang-Heon LEE, I have questions to both of you about Dr.Answer and the cloud PHIS system. I'd like to talk about the cost sharing both home and abroad in terms of investment, because there could be different stakeholders that participate in the consortium, and how is the cost sharing determined among the stakeholders? The second question is about utilizing such data. What about the security issue of such data? That is my second question. Thank you very much for the meaningful question. Basically, for the developed software, when the hospital plans to use such software, the ultimate payer in the long run would be the hospitals that will be purchasing the software for use inside the hospital, and the cost will then be provided to the software developers. But depending on the different software solutions, there could be different cases. But in this case, hospitals and the IT companies collaborated for the development. So related to the IP, it will depend on the actual revenue and compensation, depending on the participation of the parties. So in terms of the contribution to the hospital, and in terms of reducing the diagnostic time and enhancing diagnostic accuracy, I believe that the hospitals will truly enjoy the benefits of such cost. And related to the data security, since this is a cloud-based solution, and this would be true for both cloud-based solutions and other. I believe Dr. Sang-Heon LEE will have a greater knowledge of the cloud system because it is used at the hospital, and I believe he will be a better person to give you the answer.
As for the cost sharing part, well, when it comes to the project, there is private investment and also government funding. So compared to any other programs that have been developed in Korea, yes, so there has been a massive investment for this project, but the purpose is very special in that it produces high-quality data and provides meaningful solutions to the patients as well as humanity. In order to continue with the dissemination of the system, of course, the initial investment cost was about 180 billion Korean won. But this is not to be borne solely by hospitals. Now, hospitals have their existing legacy systems, but they're able to attain about 40% savings in terms of cost. So they would only have to pay for the minimum expenses. So if we're able to include more users in the system, more hospitals, and medical big data, especially of high quality, will be produced and will be able to set in motion a virtuous cycle. Because this is a national project, and this national system will be beneficial to all of the hospitals, and this medical big data will be beneficial for the country as well as patients, not only in Korea, but also outside the country. Second, on the issue of security, of course, security is a very important matter, especially when it comes to medical records and information. So these are legacy systems at hospitals. The security matters are to be managed by the hospitals themselves. I understand that there's a lot of investment being made, but they can only do so far or go so far. So we have this hospital information that resides on the Naver cloud. Of course, other systems are very secure, but Naver cloud has never really had a single major accident or incidents in terms of hacking. I understand that tens of billions of Korean won is being invested to ensure the security of information there. So rather than keeping this information at the hospitals physically, it is most effective to keep the information on the cloud system, on the Naver cloud, because especially considering the fact that Naver cloud is making a lot of investment for security every year. For example, there's 3-layer or 5-step security system, which really keeps medical information of patients safe. And this system, of course, as I mentioned before, is very important. It is going to be upgraded. And I understand that there's going to be higher requirement for keeping that information on the cloud system. So from BTC, the UK, Mr. Lee, I have a question to Mr. Lee Sang-Goog. So in terms of the digital New Deal, you talked about digital dam, which is collecting data. Intelligent criminal analysis is also an area of application for this digital big dam project. So how do you address privacy concerns? Do you have any countermeasures to deal with this privacy concern? You also talked about digital divide, and the government is making effort to address that. But what about those people who are not really familiar with the smart devices or who do not have access to smart devices? The vulnerable classes, members of society, or people with limited access to facilities, or elderly population who are not living in the facilities. How are you going to ensure accessibility to such services for these vulnerable members of society? Thank you very much for the question. So personal privacy issue for the data, yes, this is a matter of priority for the Korean government, and we're making preparations in that regard. Personal Information Protection Committee was set up. And for the digital data dam, it is really not about collecting personal information. It is to be anonymized and to make sure that this information is not leaked out to any malicious users. Also, in terms of utilization of the data, there are, for example, standardization processes as well as guidelines being developed in order to minimize any concerns in relation to the personal information protection. Second issue related to digital divide. True that there are many vulnerable members of society, so we're providing support for disability facilities as well as elderly care facilities. We also implement relevant infrastructures there. We also have a very active local community centers at different regions. They're very close to people living in society. Because these local community centers are very effectively managed, we're trying to utilize that facility to provide access to vulnerable members of society. For example, healthcare management system, and small devices are provided to these people. Of course, we cannot do this for everyone. We're trying to increase the number of people that will receive benefits. And we'll be able to address digital divide to quite a level. Thank you very much. And we will try to take more questions.
Yes, Ms. Sang-Heon Lee, you can ask another question. Well, I missed a question before on. Vice Minister Cho, may I ask a question to you? These days, we're seeing the process of vaccination. And I think what you discussed could also be of utilization for the effective and efficacy, for example, group vaccination or group immunization. We're journalists, so we want to ask questions about the current events. Well, about the vaccinations, I am not an expert, so I'm afraid I cannot give you the details. I do not think there could be something directly relevant, but nevertheless, from the Digital New Deal policy perspective, we will continue to collect data related to vaccination as well. And we also plan to utilize such data for future vaccination programs, just as Prime Minister mentioned today. The green card for vaccination, a so-called vaccination passport system, is already complete, and it will soon be provided as a mobile app. So with that, I believe it will be more helpful for the social distancing as well as other quarantine measures, including vaccination. So not only in Korea, but also in other areas, I believe that this will lead to more services, and in turn, this will create new data, and this will, in the long run, create a virtuous cycle.
From Taiwan, Yang Chen Hao from KONews. I am Yang Chen Hao from Taiwan KONews. I have a question to Vice Minister. So Dr.Answer and PHIS. Of course, would require hospitals to pay for this service. So how long do you think it's going to take for the system to be fully disseminated to all the hospitals across the country? Perhaps our project team leader could answer that.
The supply of the Dr.Answer software, just as I've already said, at the Asan Medical Center, it is already being used on site in actual diagnosis and treatment. We have currently developed 21 software, but when you look at the AI healthcare solutions, its actual application is limitless. So with MSIT and with NEPA, we're currently working on the Dr.Answer 2.0 version, and this has already been planned and materialized. So for that, I'd like to extend my gratitude to the ministry. And from April this year, we will have a 4-year project for 12 diseases. And for that, we aim to develop 25 solutions. And the connection of the previous version and the next version is very critical, because for the version 1.0, the data that is developed and used and the software that is developed and used is mainly for the tertiary hospitals and large hospitals. But in the long run, the primary hospitals and smaller scale hospitals are actually in a greater need of such software. So in the second version of Dr.Answer, we aim to focus more on the diseases that are more diagnosed and treated at such smaller scale hospitals. So this will enhance and expand the portfolio of Dr.Answer. And I think you asked about the timeline and future time period. Well, we talk about a critical mass. So once we meet such critical mass, I believe that the actual application will grow exponentially.
Thank you. So we'll try to take questions. Mr. Kwon from USCDS. So I asked a very high-level question, but I have 2 more questions. And this is actually a micro-level question, I should say. I have a question to Mr. Kim.
This is about children, and this is about the rare genetic diseases. And you said that the solution could help because when you look at this picture, this shows a fetus, but you mentioned that this could help diseases of children. So I want to know actual time range. And also, I wanted to know about the level of accuracy about the Alzheimer's diagnosis. So after I listen to the answer, I'd like to move on to the second question. For hearing disorders and developmental disorders, related solutions, well, we can't actually draw a line of the age group, but normally it refers to children under 1 to 2 years of age. Because when a child is born, it normally takes time to actually discover that the child has hearing disabilities. There could be many reasons. It could be a genetic, and in case there's a genetic background, early diagnosis is a key for early treatment as well. I don't know whether you could understand this accurately, but you can't actually tell if something is wrong or right. But there are children that have something different. When you look at a spectrum of a child, there is something slightly delayed in their development process. This is a kind of something you can detect if only you're a parent. When you compare your child with the surrounding peer group, you could see certain delays in their actions and other types of developmental processes. And previously, we went through the genetic analysis of the past, and it normally took very long time, even months and years. That was the existing medical paradigm. But the Dr.Answer solution covers the entire genetic coverage and conducts an analysis of the tile series. In the past, for example, according to a certain developer, we used like a shuffle to find the needle in the haystack, but now it's like using a pork ring. So we had some encouraging examples because normally these cases do not gain much social interest, especially children with rare genetic diseases. And if our software could really provide valuable help, I think this is something very encouraging. And the children could actually benefit deeply. And if you think of the age group, well, for our Dr.Answer 1.0, it is normally the age group of 2 years and under. And for dementia diagnosis and its accuracy, this solution is actually an assistive solution. So to clarify, the people who we normally call normal, when we have that as a comparative reference, as a brain image, and then we now analyze the percentile of the different atrophies of the brain. We divide the brain in 50 areas, for example, and then try to identify and quantify the level of atrophy and also its numbers. I think I'm taking too long, but when a physician, if they have expertise in such diagnosis, might not take that long, but in many cases, that's not the case. For example, so if the solution helps with identifying the level of atrophy, this will be of great help for diagnosing the dementia in terms of the speed and timeline, as well as the accuracy of the diagnosis. And about the second question, I think this is about overseas application as well. I want to know what kind of countries were actually interested in this solution. Well, this solution is developed and is being applied in domestic healthcare facilities. The solution basically utilizes the data that is collected and created. And I believe we may expect that there would be a better performance in the Asian countries, but we also had a verification project in Saudi Arabia. And if we put a certain level of effort for customization, we believe that this could be used in other areas. But I don't want to depict a certain or specific software. But for example, if a certain software took about 15 minutes for analysis, it takes only about 1 to 2 minutes for our solution to conduct an analysis. So this is very beneficial for the accuracy and the reduction of time. Very much.
So there are other foreign correspondents who are unable to participate in this event. They can also ask their questions through the online format. Let me just read these questions for the speakers over here. So this question is related to the security problems. This question goes to Dr. Lee. So IT, computers, and new digital technologies, as they're becoming very important, it is very important to come up with an effective anti-hacking strategies and countermeasures, because this is directly related to people's lives. So there are, for example, hackers in very rich countries, but also other hackers that are in relatively poor countries. These are homegrown hackers, which could really pose a serious threat to the security system of a country. So how do you plan to deal with such possibility? I fully agree with you 100%. Prime Minister of Singapore, actually his medical information was leaked out. It was not residing on the cloud system. It was an information that was physically residing at a specific hospital. Well, I'm not the expert on security. I'm the clinical physician. However, well, because of this reason, I would not be able to go into specific matters related to security, but there's a cost element to this as well. For example, when we're trying to secure safety of technology, we have to understand these different variables, and we have to understand that there are emerging hacking technologies, and there's also security softwares that are being developed to top that. And of course, the most advanced ones would be very costly, and you would have to continue to update that, and you would have to pay, for example, tens of billions of dollars to upgrade your systems. However, hospitals are not financially well funded to maintain a highest level of security for their systems. So it is important to keep that system at a relatively reasonable level with some significant investment to be made. But as was mentioned before, if it is done at a, for example, a national level, and if there are, for example, top-notch hackers that are trying to go after the system, there's really no guarantee that the system will be fully protected. And this important medical information is going to be the target of these hackers. So the best solution would be to detect the latest available hacking technologies out there. And in order for hospitals to do that, they need to keep their medical information and data on the cloud system. So let me back up with that. That's a very important question related to security. Cloud service providers as well as hospitals have to make their own efforts. Of course, but there's a lot of work to be done by the government as well. We have a Personal Information Protection Committee, and we're going to be joining the EU GDPR very soon. So we're making continuous efforts in order to improve the security level of information. This is actually a competition, for example, of a SOAR as well as a protection, a defense, a shield. So we're going to continue to make effort to strengthen our security network, but we will continue to monitor the developments in the market with the relevant ministries. I just want to reassure you once again that there are a lot of efforts being made at the government level as well. There are about 110 diplomatic missions that are watching this program as well. We have ambassador of Bangladesh, an ambassador of Nicaragua, an ambassador of Dominican Republic, and also counselor from the Vietnam embassy, as well as economic officer from the embassy of Belgium. Do you have any questions from the diplomatic corps here?
My name is Rodrigo Coronel. I'm an ambassador of Nicaragua. First of all, I want to say that it's a very exciting time to be here and see the development of such potential human-changing software. Do you, in the timeline, have
그렇다면 대한민국 정부는 이러한 소프트웨어를 하나의 원조로 코이카를 통해서 타국에 원조로 제공할 계획이 있는지요? 장기적인 이러한 지원 계획이 있는지 궁금합니다. It was a question about export and aid. Mr. Shanghan Lee.
PHIS, from the initial development process, of course, the main objective is to share this with other countries around the world. And through the ODA program, we're currently thinking of entering the Uzbekistan market. So we made an announcement that we're currently waiting for the results. So we're ready to enter other markets, whether it is a COICA program or ODA program. There's a competition process involved. So yes, we're going to continue to work towards that end. So let me add to that. This is an ODA program, which means that there is a demand side to be considered. We have to look at overall, for example, demand as well as candidate products or goods in the ODA program, and we have to go through a rigorous selection process. So we cannot just make arbitrary decisions as to which country that we're going to move into. We also have to see whether it is a good fit and match with a candidate country. As two people already said, we can also work at a private level. For example, with the consultations that are currently underway with Saudi Arabia, for example, to share proceeds or maybe to disseminate this program in certain countries together. So I think we can go through different channels, whether it is private channel or an official government channel.
Are there any questions from the floor? From BBC Korea. I have a question to Dr. Chong-Jai KIM. You mentioned 8 major diseases, and you said that the solution can help with the treatment and diagnosis. And if it is diagnosed in a remote manner, for the heart, for disease or for other cases which require more detailed face-to-face treatment, I'm afraid there could be a risk that we can actually miss out on the diagnosis because of a remote treatment and diagnosis. That's a very critical question. The basic presumption of the solution is that the Dr.Answer solution will not replace the role of the physician. When a remote treatment is provided, well, in Korea, remote treatment is a very sensitive issue. But when you think of different countries, hospitals in different parts of the world, if there's a single patient, there could be a communication of different opinions. But if they share a single image and through a single software to share their opinions and engage in communication, well, if Dr.Answer software is if it's provided to other parts of the world, we could also utilize the patient images or medical images from the different hospitals and analyze them in a more consistent manner. But when we think about remote treatment itself, for the current period of time, as of now, in a most ideal case, it would be to utilize the software for the patient and the physicians together to discuss, and also the different physicians in different parts of the world to engage in the discussion for decision making. That would be the ideal scenario as of now. But if we expect an upgrade in the infrastructure, we could actually even think of a remote treatment of a patient on one side and the doctor on the other side. But for the current situation, this is that it could facilitate the communication among physicians themselves, not between the patient and the doctor. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? If not, we'd like to invite Vice Minister for his closing remarks. Are there any following questions? Yes, one last question.
From New York Times, Lee Soo-young. I would appreciate if this question can be answered by anyone. The system is very excellent in and of itself, but if there is a competitive or competition out there in the market, what would that be? And in what type of contributions can this system make, especially in terms of maybe cost competitiveness or connectivity, or in terms of the contents? What are some of the specific areas that this system can contribute to? For Dr.Answer.
As I mentioned in the latter part of my presentation, This is an R&D project, and under this consortium, the software is developed by different companies under a single umbrella. I think this is an unprecedented example throughout the world. Well, there could be world-renowned companies and their platforms where diverse softwares are uploaded. But compared to that, I believe the Dr.Answer project holds a great significance because of its structure. Under the current reality, what I felt as I led the project was, when you look at Korea of today, we see that Korean hospitals are highly advanced as well as their medical data. And the ICT companies also have so many talents working there. A limited number of hospitals and a limited number of software developers develop software, and then the software developer would want hospitals to actually use them. But this is a great challenge because it's not easy to persuade the physicians to try out their solutions. So in many cases, they could fail. And from the hospital side, even if they see new softwares that's presented by software developers, they are first suspicious because they don't have a criteria to determine whether they're actually trustworthy or not. But I think this consortium provides a basic framework where mutual sides could have trust for the other, and where the actual functionality and efficacy of the software is guaranteed under this framework. Because if a solution is developed under Dr.Answer, then this could be guaranteed that because Dr.Answer could kind of provide a role of a referral and a person that provides recommendation. So I think that is where we find the significance of this project. And if we see the software to increase in number, I believe we could go overseas. And in the long run, the AI solution under Dr.Answer will be guaranteed of its success and accuracy. And I think this is a very important start to persuade other physicians worldwide to utilize them. But we should, of course, consider the commercial platforms and other issues. But in terms of the functionality and in terms of preference of making selections, I think that is, well, that could be another thing to consider. But in the long run, this is a very important starting point.
As for PHIS, this is a cloud-based world-first system that has been applied to tertiary hospitals. And of course, there are big market share IT companies that are doing similar things. But in terms of cloud system, we were the first to actually have done this successfully. And also insurance structures and systems are all different across countries. So it is very difficult to move into a certain country's market. So we're trying to utilize PHIS and trying to see their own hospital information systems in different regions across the countries through collaboration, utilizing medical big data. And to add to that, when it comes to performance or price levels on softwares, and of course there are different factors for differentiation. And we would be able to understand the results by running the software benchmark tests. But it's very important to actually hear from the physicians out in the field. And I believe that the performance of the systems and softwares would be fully showcased and demonstrated through the experience. And this is probably something that would merit a lot of attention.
And there was a question about the vaccination issue. So about what Prime Minister mentioned. Well, considering the situation for vaccination, about the vaccine passport, we will need to discuss this with other countries, but not the passport, but we will discuss the possibility of a green card. And I'd like to move on to my closing remarks. I'd like to thank the foreign journalists and also to COSIS for providing such a meaningful opportunity. And I also like to extend my gratitude to all who have participated through the YouTube channels. And also, I'd like to thank the project leaders for taking your precious time out of your busy schedule to introduce Dr. Answer and PHIS. Dr. Chong-Jai Kim and Dr. Sang-Heon Lee. Without you, we could not have this achievement with us. As you see today, the Korean medical industry is accelerating the introduction of artificial intelligence. And Korea is quickly overcoming the COVID-19 crises as companies and markets are gaining vitality through the Digital New Deal policy. And the medical industry of Korea is also utilizing AI and the PHIS system through the fourth industrial revolution. I hope that the Korean Digital New Deal policy and the preparation level for future medical services will be shared around the world. I'd like to once again thank all of you. Thank you.
Let me just make one short announcement. We're celebrating the 50th anniversary at COSIS, and we're going to have these monthly policy briefings. So I will see you again next month. Thank you very much, and this concludes our policy briefing. Thank you.